about death for a second. Not in a sad way, in a very specific, slightly unsettling way. Right now, if someone showed you a dead body, your brain would probably do one of two things: freeze or run. That reaction feels so natural, you'd assume every human who ever lived felt it too. They didn't. For most of human history, people touched dead bodies constantly, washed them, carried them, slept next to them, sometimes for days. And they weren't traumatized. They weren't horrified. It was just Tuesday. So what happened to us? Let's start with something that's going to sound made up, but isn't. Archaeologists studying burial sites going back over 100,000 years have found something consistent across almost every ancient culture. Bodies weren't rushed away and hidden. They were kept close, sometimes literally slept beside for extended periods before burial. In some Neanderthal sites, researchers found evidence that bodies were deliberately positioned, almost tenderly, suggesting this wasn't disposal, it was care, which honestly puts a lot of modern breakups into perspective. At least ancient humans knew how to properly say goodbye to something. Now here's where it gets genuinely wild. In many hunter-gatherer societies still studied today, and in ancient texts from cultures around the world, death wasn't treated as a hard stop. It was treated more like a transition. Family members would wash the body themselves, dress it, sit with it, talk to it. Not because they were confused about biology. They understood death perfectly well. They just didn't see the body as something dangerous or forbidden. It was still grandma. She just wasn't going to respond anymore. Compare that to modern life, where the moment someone dies, we call professionals we've never met to take the body away within hours, so we never have to actually see or touch what happened. We've built an entire industry around not having to deal with death ourselves, which is either deeply practical or deeply avoidant, depending on how you look at it. So why the difference? Why were ancient humans so calm about something that makes most of us want to leave the room immediately? Turns out, a lot of it comes down to exposure. Ancient humans were around death constantly, not because life was cheap to them, because life was short, unpredictable, and death was simply part of the daily landscape. Childbirth was dangerous. Disease had no cure. Predators existed. When death is a regular visitor, instead of a rare, shocking event, your brain stops treating it as an emergency. It starts treating it as information. This isn't just psychology, either. There's actual biology behind it. Researchers studying fear responses have found that humans aren't born with an automatic fear of dead bodies. That fear is largely learned, shaped by culture, avoidance, and unfamiliarity. Babies don't recoil from stillness. Toddlers don't understand mortality enough to be horrified by it. Fear of death, specifically the visual, physical fear of a corpse, is something we pick up later, largely because modern society trains us to associate dead bodies with danger, disease, and taboo, which, to be fair, isn't entirely wrong. But it's also not the full story. Here's the twist that genuinely surprised researchers. In several ancient cultures, keeping remains close wasn't just emotional, it was functional. In parts of ancient Papua New Guinea, and among certain indigenous groups historically, bones of ancestors were sometimes kept in the home, displayed, or carried during significant events. Not out of morbid obsession, out of respect. The belief was that ancestors remained part of the family, offering protection, guidance, even luck. Basically, imagine keeping your great-grandfather's skull on the mantle instead of a photo, and somehow that being the emotionally healthier option. And this is where things get uncomfortably relevant. Modern death anxiety, the intense fear many people feel just thinking about dying or seeing death up close, is actually a relatively recent psychological phenomenon. Psychologists refer to a concept called terror management theory, the idea that humans build entire belief systems, careers, relationships, and daily distractions specifically to avoid confronting the reality of mortality. Ancient humans didn't have that luxury. They couldn't distract themselves from death with Netflix. Therefore, they had to actually process it directly, which, weirdly, may have made them mentally healthier around the topic than we are. Let's talk about hygiene for a second, because someone's definitely thinking it. Yes, some ancient death practices involved real health risks, and yes, that's part of why funeral customs evolved the way they did. But early humans weren't ignorant about this. Many cultures developed specific rituals, washing practices, herbs, and timing customs specifically designed around understanding decomposition. They weren't reckless, they were experienced. They'd simply had more hands-on exposure to death than any of us will ever have. Unless you also work at a funeral home, in which case, respect. So here's the uncomfortable question this video is really asking. Did death actually get scarier? Or did we just get more disconnected from it? Modern humans experience death mostly through screens, news reports, movies, dramatized funerals, horror films where corpses jump up and scream. We've been trained by fiction to associate dead bodies with danger, not reality. Meanwhile, real death, the quiet, ordinary kind, has been pushed further and further out of daily life. Hospitals, funeral homes, closed caskets. We've outsourced our relationship with mortality so completely that many adults today have literally never touched a dead body, not even a family member's. And that would have been almost unthinkable a few hundred years ago. Ancient humans weren't fearless because they were tougher than us. They were fearless because death wasn't hidden from them. It was witnessed, processed, and integrated into life instead of quarantined away from it. And maybe that's the real difference. Not bravery, familiarity. If this made you think differently about how disconnected we've become from something every single human eventually faces, that's exactly what it was supposed to do. Subscribe for more videos that dig into the strange, uncomfortable truths hiding behind everyday human behavior.